Hello, YouTube world. Well, I guess, still going back home, what happened here. I said a few weeks, maybe a month ago, libtards at it again. Of course, they like to continue, I say they're terrorists and fascist ways, that's what liberals are, is a terrorist hate group. But, it's about they want to take down these Confederate monuments. I guess they took a statue down of Robert Lee in Louisiana, someplace like that. I think it was New Orleans. Not sure I read more, but that's okay. And there was a lot of protesters, protests against removal, and people were protesting against the statue, stuff like that. And after looking into this, and after knowing what I know of history, I know history pretty well, and history of the Civil War, especially, and it kind of gets me, Do you think, that removing the statue of General Robert E. Lee in New Orleans is going to really change anything? It's going to make everything all better, because what I've seen, you try to maybe put General Grant on the pedestal and trash General Lee because General Lee was a general of the Confederate Army, the Army of Virginia, and pretty much, and General Grant was a general of the Union Army. But maybe so. I mean, they think well, General Lee had slaves. Did he not? I mean, I don't know. Who really cares? And I read articles that General Grant had slaves. So I'm gonna say this: if both generals speculation that both of them have slaves, then what's the damn difference anyway? Now, what I've seen here racing the past few years, a lot of liberals, libtards like to trash the South, saying the South is a racist, bigoted area, with black codes and all the segregation going went on down the South and everything else. And I'm not going to deny the fact it happened. Yes, I'm from the South. I know for a fact it happened. But maybe the libtards don't realize or refuse to realize because they won't realize the truth that a lot of that stuff, as far as segregation and black code stuff like that, was not immune to the South. It went all across the United States. All across the United States. I mean, Chicago, Democratic stronghold area today. It went on Chicago in a lot of ways, And if you read the book, Bearing the Cross by Martin Luther King Jr., he took a job out north in California. In California, he had a hard time finding hotels because the hotels didn't have black people. And that happened in California. But, but what gets me, if you look at the Civil War days, I'm just going back to that, I'm sorry, I kind of sidetracked a little bit. But, people think that the Union Army, marched in the South, to free slaves. And to my knowledge, nothing's farther. I know for a fact nothing's farther from the truth. A lot of the Union states, had slaves, and had slaves all the way to the Civil War days, border states. Kentucky had slaves all the way up to the Civil War days. So did Missouri. I believe, those I do know for a fact, maybe a few others. And in the other states, even though they were free states, and one guy made a good point about this, but a lot of those states, like maybe Illinois and Ohio, have what you call like antebellum laws, like if fugitive slaves escape from the South or escape from a slave state, and say he went to Ohio, well, according to the laws, they're not going to harbor him. They're not going to keep him. They're going to extradite him back where he came from. Illinois, a lot of those Union states were like that back then. Even though a lot were free states, if escaped slave went up north to those free states, doesn't mean he was free and he was off the hook. A lot of those states up north sent him back to the South because of their law. Because their law says they will not harbor fugitive slaves. So imagine that. And I can't get all these libtards, they don't look at stuff like this, But yet they want to tear down Confederate monuments. Alabama passed a law saying you can't do that. Thank God for Alabama did that. And while I'm afraid in Georgia, there is a big old Confederate monument down there that they want to take down, say it's racist. And I'm thinking liberals are so stupid. and so fucking retarded, Histolian libtard, they just don't realize taking those monuments down is not going to change a thing. It's not going to change nothing. It's not going to erase history. I'm sorry, but you cannot erase the Civil War. No matter how many monuments you tear down, how many books you burn or tear up and everything else, you cannot just escape the truth. Do you think taking those monument mounds is going to end racism? Not. You think taking those monument mounds is going to make everything all better? It's going to make us forget slavery ever happened? No. Do you think taking those monuments down is going to alter history? No, because you want us to know history from your point of view, but don't want to look at the hardcore truth in the matter. When the Civil War first started, it didn't go right on off freeing slaves. No, it was like pretty much into the war. When pretty much almost the end of the war, when the slaves were finally free. The South had to free their slaves first for political reasons. Then the Union states who had slaves had to free their slaves last. Yet some of the liberals are so stupid thinking the Civil War is all about slavery, and it's not. And what's kind of weird, you want to alter, and so you got this Marxist way of trying to alter history a little bit. Trying to change history by taking those monuments down. Burning trying to outlaw the Confederate flag, and everything else, and it's just so fucking stupid. And by the way, I also like to point. Do you know there were black Confederate soldiers too? Yet nobody hardly ever mentions that. Nobody will ever acknowledge that. Yes, pick up history book and you'll find out. I'll Google it. You'll find out they were black Confederate soldiers back in those days. Yes, that did happen. So taking those monuments down is not going to change it. You think racism only happens in the South? You really think that? So taking the monuments down is going to make it all in? I say no, I don't work that way, bro. You police liberals, your Marxist liberal terrorists, think just erasing history is going to make everything better. And no, it's not. The Civil War happened. The Civil War was not about freeing slaves. I hate to break that to you. You don't believe me? Look up a history book. You look into it, you can figure out why the Civil War happened. I know why. Land rights. But I'm not getting to that right now. Yet, you fail to realize too, if you go south of the border, south onto South America, like Brazil, a few of those places, they had slaves back down in South America. And slavery didn't end to the 1880s. You know why it took so long to free slaves? Part of the reason because it was not for economic reasons. Yes, because owning slaves was expensive, and it was cheaper for them to go to machines and everything. It was not feasible to have slaves. That's why they freed them. So I will say this: if the Civil War didn't happen in the United States, then slavery probably would have ended, not the 1880s, probably the early 1900s when slavery would have ended. Anyway, And it was the fact of the matter that it was the fact that, since the Confederate States of America, they tried to start it, seceded from the Union, and Lincoln and the federal government said, hell no, you're not going to do that, and sent troops down to prevent that from happening, was the whole reason that slaves were freed. It was a byproduct of the Civil War. That was it, for political reasons. Lincoln himself said he could serve the Union without freeing a single slave. Well, without freeing a single slave, he would do it. And yes, he would have. And everything I'm pretty much telling you is true. So don't you be thinking with your Marxist ideas, your common socialist ideas, that taking down the Confederate monuments, which is a piece of American history, to remind us about the Civil War, what was fought, that taking them down is going to make everything all better, all hunky-dory, And yet you don't fail to realize, though, in the Union side, there were racist generals, Grant was racist as well, But you put the Union side on a pedestal, which is far from the truth. And as far as the slave trade, a lot of the slavery came in Annapolis, Maryland. You hear me? Maryland. That's where all the slaves came through at. But I don't know if you want to realize that or not. You know. And, you know, as far as closes out, as far as you know, you want to erase the Confederate flag, say it's racist, it represents slavery, you know, and all this other nonsense. And one guy, you know, he said it the best, you know. So that's the case, you know. And you gotta be honest, you know. When they was shipping slaves to the New World, you know, Portugal, Spain, England, you know, let's say the British ships, a lot of them was waving the Union Jack flag for bringing slaves into the United States. You had the Spanish and Portugal was pretty much doing not waving Union Jack flag, but waving their own flag. So I would say this: you want to put that in perspective. But this is perspective. I guess the Union Jack flag is racist. I guess the Spanish flag is racist. The Portuguese flag is racist because it was pretty much waving those flags when shipping slaves into the new world. So those flags need to be racist as well. And of course, you know, you think the American, a lot of people, libtards, you know, I'm gonna say white liberals, especially if the American flag is racist. Maybe I'll pick up a book and read more about the American flag, you know. Maybe you should do that, you know. You turn to this hate American terrorist group, socialist Marxist group, you know. Yet you go on and have no idea what I'm talking about. At least I know what I'm talking about. You think what I'm telling you is bullshit? Well, look it up. Okay, just look it up. Just look it up. So you're saying tear down the monuments because it's racist, huh? So should we tear down Auschwitz? Should we tear down Auschwitz? Should we take a bulldozer to Auschwitz? I'm going to ask you that. And what is Auschwitz? Go look it up to find out what Auschwitz is, you know. I say it's a camp in Poland. That's all I'm going to tell you. Auschwitz. Or look up another camp in I'm better not say, pronounce the word. But there's a camp in Croatia back in World War II days where over 1 million people died. So we should tear that camp down as well. You liberals are nothing but hypocrites, double standard people that goes on TV and makes fool of your fucking self. They promote terrorism and Marxism. I don't know what to say. And before I shut this out, I'm going to show you something here. What is this? This is a book, you know. I know a lot of you liberals don't like these things, you know. It's like kryptonite to you liberals, you know. But it says, Chicken Soup for the Soul, the Spirit of America. 101 stories about what makes our country great. Oh, so is this book racist? Should we ban this book? Because it says Chicken Soup for the Soul. Because it says the Spirit of America. 101 stories about what makes our country great. Get the fuck out of here. Oh well, YouTube, bro. I better shut that out. Shut this out. If I say this, you know, tearing down those Confederate monuments is not going to change a damn thing. You know. And once you read the history books, the Union Army and the Union soldiers all were just as racist as the Southerners. Just as racist. And they didn't march in the South to free slaves. I hate to break it to you, but they did. It was more all for land rights. And slavery wasn't issued pretty much towards the end of the Civil Damn War any damn way. It was a byproduct of the Civil War. Okay? You ought to be thankful about the Confederate States of America, because wasn't for them, slavery probably went in almost to the turn of the century, around the early 1900s, the late 1890s probably. And they'll probably would have freed them for economical reasons, more or less. But I guess you liberals, you libtards are just too stupid or just don't want to realize that. Because you want to look for racism and bigotry everywhere. But like I said, so we want to tear those down. Let's tear on Auschwitz down. Sobibor, let's tear that down as well. Okay? You know what those are? Go look it up. Go look it up. Because racism is not immune to the United States. If you look what other countries did, you know, you'll be amazed. Because you got your head so far up your damn ass, you know what? Where the sun don't shine at. Oh well. Goodbye, YouTube. Well, God bless you. Bye bye.